Mocked by her CEO, the incredible moment a black waitress transformed his heart in 60 seconds. The diner buzzed with life, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with sizzling bacon and the chatter of friends reconnecting over greasy plates. In the heart of Chicago, this little gem, the Great American Diner, stood as a testament to resilience and community spirit. And at its center was Lisa. A single mother of two, she balanced trays of food and love, her smile brighter than the diner's neon sign at dusk. But little did she know, today would bring an unexpected twist. Enter Mark, the corporate titan whose presence alone was enough to suck the joy from the room. Dressed to the nines in a suit that screamed privilege and disdain, he looked down his nose at the warm, bustling haven before him. "What a dump," he sneered, his voice draped in superiority. Tension thickened like fog as he scanned the room, but it was Lisa's sunny demeanor that caught his eye next. "Welcome to the Great American Diner. What can I get for you?" she asked, handing him a menu with genuine excitement. "Are you always this cheerful, or is it an act?" He shot back, a smirk plastered across his face. Murmurs rippled through the diner, and Lisa felt a familiar tightening in her chest, an all-too-common reaction to bitterness from those who didn't understand her struggles. But she stood her ground. "It's not an act. Life's hard enough. I have 2 kids who look up to me. I want them to chase their dreams, not live with a chip on their shoulder," she said, her voice steady, stronger than iron, even as a few patrons leaned in closer. Mark's eyes flickered with annoyance, but something was shifting within him. Surrounded by the noise of clattering dishes and laughter, Lisa's words pierced through. They were the raw, unfiltered reality of a working mother grappling day-to-day with the weight of survival and hope. "Yeah. And you think they'll just magically get what they want?" He scoffed, but he seemed less sure of himself now. The crowd inched closer, sensing a deeper drama unfolding, one where Lisa stood tall in a world that often knocked her down. Lisa took a breath, her heart pounding. "No, it's not magic. It's grit. You might not believe it, but I wake up every day ready to make things better, no matter how impossible it seems. And that's what I want for my kids, fighting chances, not handouts." In that moment, the diner fell silent. Patrons caught glimpses of their own struggles as Lisa's voice vibrated through unspoken fears and aspirations. Mark felt walls he didn't realize he had started to crumble, pieces of his own past floating back like a haunting melody. He was once a kid with dreams, after all. Just as the air sparked with unspoken potential, a voice echoed from the back, cutting through the silence. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The energy shifted again, but Mark's gaze remained locked on Lisa. Her fire ignited something in him, a flicker of hope that perhaps he could be different. In that split second, as their eyes connected, his heart raced with the possibility of change. But just as Mark stood on the edge of a revelation, the door swung open, interrupting their shared moment. The world beyond buzzed with its chaos, and Lisa's gaze still held Mark's. What did this mean for both of them? For Lisa's dreams? For a city caught in a web of inequality? The diner buzzed once again, a mixture of hope and uncertainty hanging thick in the air, and everyone waited with bated breath for the answers. The door swung open with a gust of cold air, making everyone shiver for a moment. In walked a figure, tall and imposing, yet wrapped in a threadbare coat that spoke of days spent on the streets. The buzz of the diner grew quiet again as eyes shifted from Mark and Lisa to this newcomer. His face was rough, etched with stories of hardship, and yet there was a light in his eyes that sparked curiosity and concern. "Is this where I can find a warm meal?" he asked, his voice a blend of hope and exhaustion. Lisa's heart tightened. She didn't need to hear more to understand. This was a struggle she recognized all too well. Of course. Take a seat anywhere you like, she said, her voice gentle, pushing aside the thoughts racing in her mind. She felt the responsibility of being the one who could offer help amidst her own chaotic life. Mark blinked, the interruption a reminder that the world he roamed was not the only reality. He turned his gaze back to Lisa. You think everyone gets what they want merely by trying? His earlier bravado seemed to crack as he watched her approach the stranger, listening intently as she took the man's order. Sometimes, it's about survival, not dreams, Lisa replied, glancing at Mark, her eyes stirring with a silent challenge. Sometimes it's simply about making it through the day. Mark felt a shift inside him. The impatience he usually wore as armor seemed to lift as the weight of her words settled. And is that enough? What do you mean? She asked, now intrigued. Is waking up every day just to survive enough? As the man at the table began to eat, Mark's irritation faded into something softer, something she could not yet name. People all around them sipped coffee, their conversations muted, caught somewhere between admiration for Lisa and pity for the newcomer. This was her world, filled with layers upon layers of struggle. Lisa nodded, sensing the air thickening with unresolved feelings. Survival is the foundation. But we build something from that. It might be hope, a dream, sometimes just a moment of joy. Mark pursed his lips, contemplating her words. It was hard for him to fathom a life where moments of joy were earned through grit and resilience. He always claimed he was too busy, too caught up in the chase of being on top, to even consider the alternate reality in front of him. Don't you ever get tired? He asked, genuine. Sometimes, yes. But each smile I see from my kids, each moment they laugh, that makes it all worth it. Her words hung in the air, wrapped around them like an invisible ribbon that tied their lives momentarily together. Mark's heart fluttered with something unfamiliar. Was it longing for connection or recognition of his own shortcomings? The remaining patrons watched Lisa, some smiling softly, as if she were a beacon of light in their often dim world. Then, unexpectedly, Mark blinked back a wave of emotion. This wasn't just a waitress he was looking at. This was a mother, a warrior. And he felt a stirring within himself. Perhaps he could learn something here, in this little diner. Perhaps he could find a light, too. But before he could open his mouth to speak, the door swung open once more, and the deafening chatter of people poured into the diner like a tidal wave. Mark turned towards the door, realizing the world outside was rushing in, a place he felt he'd been trying to escape. Let me check on my kids. Lisa turned to return to her duties, leaving Mark wondering if this moment of clarity was just another fleeting encounter or the chance to change everything. As the noise began to swell, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something crucial was unfolding here. Would he let this chance slip away? Or would he reach for the lifeline Lisa had thrown him amidst the chaos? The diner buzzed with renewed energy, and in that moment, Mark made a choice. At least, he thought he would. But as the conversations rose around him, he wasn't sure if he was ready yet. The question loomed in his mind: would he confront his fears and step into a newfound understanding, or would he retreat back into his world of privilege and solitude? The moment shimmered like the flickering diner lights, heavy with possibility. Lisa caught his eye one last time as she poured coffee for another table, and Mark's breath hitched. Would he dare to step up and embrace the uncertain path before him? The chatter in the diner enveloped Mark, but his focus remained trapped on Lisa. She darted between tables, her movements fluent and purposeful, a kind of ballet of service. It made him think of the comfort she offered to strangers, and he could almost see vibrant threads of resilience weaving through her every action. He couldn't help but wonder about the stories buried within her, waiting to be uncovered. As patrons laughed and shared their meals, Mark sat frozen. The questions spiraled in his mind like a fast-moving train. What would it mean to tear down the walls he had so carefully constructed around himself? What would happen if he stepped into her world, one filled with chaos, laughter, and the occasional breakdown? The man in the threadbare coat finished his meal, a smile breaking through the weariness on his face. Lisa came by again, refilling his coffee, her presence radiant. Watching her interact with the man brought a twist to Mark's gut. She was completely present, her voice uplifting, her eyes shining with sincerity. How many people had she brought hope to today? Just then, Mark felt a sudden urgency bubble up within him. It wasn't just a longing for connection, it was something deeper. He wondered if his world of luxury had made him blind to moments like these. There were so many emotions he had locked away, and now watching Lisa he wanted to set them free. "Lisa," he shouted, the letters unfamiliar on his tongue. She turned, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "Yes?" she asked, her expression softening, confusion painted across her features. Taking a deep breath, he stood up, words tumbling out in a rush. "Can I help? Is there anything I can do?" The room hushed, patrons directing their curious gazes at him. Lisa's eyebrows arched in surprise, but then a smile broke across her face, a smile that felt like sunshine after a storm. "Really? You'd want to?" she asked. There was skepticism laced within the joy, a hint of disbelief. "Yes," he replied without hesitation, unsure of everything that would follow but feeling an unexpected compulsion to dive in headfirst. Skepticism turned to delight as she pattered over, showing him where to find aprons and menus. "You can start by helping me serve the coffee or clearing the tables. And try to keep up," she added with a wink, and suddenly the diner's bright atmosphere felt charged with electricity. Mark found himself falling into a rhythm. He poured coffee as if it were a sacred ritual, connected him with the people gathered around the small tables. Laughter circulated in the air, and Mark was enveloped in the warmth of shared stories of hardship, of survival, and of joy. For every cup of coffee poured, he felt a part of himself awaken, the burden he had been carrying gradually lifting. Just as he began to settle into this unexpected role, a loud voice boomed from the entrance. A group of business executives entered, dressed impeccably, their laughter sharper than the clink of spoons on ceramic plates. "Disappointing service here," one snickered, his gaze pinning Mark down like a bug under glass. "This isn't the place for the regular crowd anymore, is it? Shouldn't you be doing something more productive?" Mark's heart raced, and his fingers fumbled awkwardly with the coffee pot. The atmosphere in the diner shifted, the buzz of conversation dulled to murmurs. They were the embodiment of the privilege he had distanced himself from, and again he felt the weight of his previous life pressing down. But then he glanced over at Lisa, who stood with her hands on her hips, unflinching, her expression a mix of defiance and grace. A spark ignited deep inside Mark, compelling him to respond. "Maybe we all need a reminder that productivity means something different," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor inside him. "We're here to serve each other, to share our humanity. Isn't that worth our time?" The diner fell silent, and for a moment, it felt like everything had stopped. Lisa's eyes widened in astonishment, flickering from him to the group, her admiration. "Clear." The executives exchanged glances, confusion and irritation flickering across their faces. Would they confront this unexpected challenge, or would they mock him again, determined to reinforce their lofty perspective? Mark braced himself for the response, and in that heartbeat, he realized something monumental was happening. He had stepped off the train of his old life, but would he be able to stay grounded in this new one? The air crackled with tension, and as he awaited their reaction, Lisa's gaze filled with encouragement kept his spirit steady. Would his boldness turn the tide, or would he retreat into silence once more? The silence in the diner felt like a heavy blanket. It was thick, almost suffocating. Mark could feel every single heartbeat in the room, his own like thunder in his ears. He held his breath, the words he had spoken hanging like fragile glass in the air. Finally, the first executive smirked, the air around him shifting back to casual arrogance. "You must be confused this place for some charity event," he sneered, and the others chuckled lightly, their laughter sharp, like shards of ice. It felt like an icy wind had swept through the room, chilling Mark to the bone. But Lisa did not break. Her posture remained proud, defiance radiating from her like a protective shield. Mark admired her strength, but doubt began to creep in. Had he misjudged? Was his plea for humanity a foolish gamble? Do you think you're better than us? Another executive chimed in, his eyes narrowing as he turned to Mark. You're just a waiter now, there's no glory in serving the likes of them. He gestured dismissively toward the other patrons, who now watched with bated breath, feeling the tension swell like a storm at sea. Mark could feel the frustration bubbling inside. He was no longer just the guy stuck in his own world of privilege. He was a part of something bigger, part of this shared moment, this little community within the cramped diner. Mustering his courage, he said more loudly, "It's not about being better. It's about being human." The words landed like a stone thrown into a still pond. A ripple of murmurs spread among the diner guests, shaking them out of their own comfortable silence. Eyes darted in Mark's direction, some hopeful, others still skeptical. Lisa took a step closer, her expression shifting from surprise to a fierce kind of pride. We all have stories, and the way we treat each other matters. Whether we're in a suit or an apron, we have value. Mark felt a rush of warmth at her side, a powerful affirmation that he wasn't alone in this. He was part of something right. The executives were momentarily stumped. They had come to the diner expecting mockery of the regular crowd, but here stood two people willing to challenge their values. Then, one of the executives, a woman with a steely gaze, folded her arms and leaned back, a hint of curiosity overtaking her disdain. "And what makes you think you're qualified to talk about value, huh?" Her eyes were sharp, but Mark could sense a crack forming in her armor. "Because I've been fortunate," Mark replied, honesty pouring from his heart. "I've lived in a bubble, surrounding myself with what looks good on the outside while ignoring what truly matters." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "I've lost the ability to feel, to see the beauty in human connection. But here, surrounded by people, real people, I'm starting to remember what living really means." The executives shared glances, their confidence beginning to falter. A few diners nodded softly, encouraged by Mark's unyielding spirit. But then, a haughty laugh erupted from one of the men. It shattered the fragile moment, pulling everyone back into tension. "This is a diner, not a therapy session," he scoffed, but the rustle in the room had changed. Even with his voice dismissive, Mark could see there was a crack in their mockery. As Lisa sidled closer, her expression fierce yet tender, Mark felt an unexpected surge of potential. Maybe this moment had the power to go beyond a single conversation. Maybe, just maybe, they could all learn something together. "Maybe we should take our time here," Lisa suggested, her voice breaking through the murmurs. "How about we share a coffee together and listen to some real stories? There's a lot more to everyone than what meets the eye." Mark could see her hope reflected in the eyes of the other patrons. Could this actually change everything? Would the executives accept her challenge? Their laughter had been replaced with wary curiosity. Mark held his breath, not knowing if this fragile opportunity would slip away or be embraced. As the executives exchanged uncertain glances, Mark's heart raced, and a question formed in his mind: was there a chance for transformation that none of them had expected? With all eyes upon him, Mark wondered what would happen next. Would he find the courage to push through, or would he retreat back to the outskirts of the conversation he had so desperately wanted to join? The tension in the diner felt like a coiled spring ready to snap. Mark could feel his heart thumping against his ribs. He looked around, catching glances exchanged between the executives. It was as if a silent debate was taking place, one that he desperately wanted to disrupt. Lisa's suggestion hung in the air, an open invitation, a lifeline thrown into swirling waters. The laughter of the executives finally dimmed, curiosity creeping in. Mark seized the moment. "Can I start?" he asked, his voice clear yet soft, the words feeling like they had weight. The executives shifted, some leaning in, while others exchanged skeptical looks. "What's a real story to you?" the woman with the steely gaze asked, her tone softer than before. Mark could sense a shift, the hardened facade beginning to crack. He took a deep breath. I grew up in a neighborhood where the most common sound was sirens. Where people struggled just to make rent. I thought my life was set when I landed a job that paid well, but it was only after serving tables here that I realized I had a lot to learn. My job may seem menial to you, but I hear stories daily. Stories of struggle, hope, and resilience. They humble me, and this place, it's not just a diner. It's a community. As Mark spoke, Lisa nodded emphatically, her eyes alight with encouragement. A small smile broke through the earlier tension on her lips, projecting warmth that even the coldest of hearts could feel. A thick silence stretched as the executives absorbed Mark's words. One young executive, the one who had laughed earlier, leaned forward, narrowing his eyes slightly. "And what do you think we can learn from your community?" he asked, the edge in his voice fading. Mark thought for a moment, then responded, "Perhaps that wealth doesn't define a person. Values, empathy, humanity, you can find those in any corner, no matter the income. These stories don't just belong to those in suits, they belong to every person who walks through that door." He gestured toward the diners seated in booths, some looking excited, others still unsure. "Then tell us a story," one of the older executives said, her voice unexpectedly curious, almost pleading. Mark felt the energy shift again. It was as though the room itself was taking a step back to listen. He glanced at Lisa, who seemed to be breathing encouragement into him. "Okay, I'll tell you about Mrs. Jenkins," he said, warmth flooding through him as he recalled the elderly woman who occupied a booth every Thursday. Mrs. Jenkins is in her 80s and comes in with a smile that could light up a room. Every week, she orders the same thing, eggs and toast, and she leaves behind a little note with her tip. They're always reminders: be kind, you never know who needs help, keep your dreams alive. Mark's voice trembled slightly. "She taught me that kindness is a choice we can all make, regardless of our station in life." The room was quiet, the executives now fully engaged. Mark spotted nods of approval and a few exchanged looks of understanding. Maybe we've been wrong about this place," the woman with the steely gaze finally said, her voice almost contemplative. Hope dripped into the atmosphere, thickening it with possibility. The patrons around them buzzed with anticipation. Could this be a turning point? Would the executives open their hearts to the stories around them, to the very humanity they had once scorned? Mark's throat tightened. What would it take for you to hear more stories? To understand how deeply we share this world? The question hung suspended, a fragile promise waiting to be embraced or shattered. All eyes remained on the executives, anticipation coursing through the diner like electricity. The moment of truth had arrived, and Mark could only wonder, was this the beginning of a monumental shift or the final stand of an unyielding arrogance? The quiet that followed was electric, charged with the weight of expectation. Mark's heart raced as he caught the gaze of the young executive, who now seemed almost human. There was a flicker of something curiosity, perhaps behind those steel-blue eyes. Mark held his breath, waiting. The older woman's voice cut through the silence, "We're listening." It was a simple statement, yet it felt like an open door. Mark's heart swelled, as if something monumental was standing on the edge, ready to tip into possibility. "Great," he breathed out, feeling the pull of his own story. "Let me tell you about another regular. His name is Frank. He comes in every Saturday morning and orders the same thing, coffee, black, and a blueberry muffin. At first, I thought it was just another routine." Mark paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. But one day, he started talking. Just the tiniest spark of conversation, asking about my day, sharing snippets of his life. I learned he lost his wife a few years back. She was his world. After she passed, he felt lost. But his Saturday ritual, it kept him grounded. He scanned the table, the executives leaning in, intrigued. He told me he comes here not just for food, but for connection. He needs to feel like he matters, like someone sees him. And you know what? Yes, right. We all need that. Mark's voice caught as he continued, the thing is, the moment he started sharing, I realized I was not just a waiter to him. I became part of his story. And he, mine. It's as if the diner became a bridge for us. A bridge to hope, understanding, and a sense of belonging. A tear glimmered in Lisa's eye, and Mark felt the lump in his throat grow. This wasn't just a story for the executives anymore, it was a testament to what he saw every day in the diner. Can you see what I mean? He implored, desperation creeping in. Every person who walks through that door carries a story, with laughter and pain intertwined. They remind us that no matter our societal standings, we all seek the same thing, connection. The young executive shifted, his expression morphing into something softer. How does that translate into us? He asked, almost tentatively. How does that make what we do any different? Mark's heart sank a little, but he pressed on. It means you hold the power to weave those stories into your work. You can inspire others, make changes that matter in those lives, but only if you choose to listen. A heartbeat of silence stretched out as the executives processed what Mark had shared. Several exchanged glances, like they were trying to grasp the gravity of it all. Finally, the woman with the steely gaze spoke again, her voice steadier now. If we listened more, what could we learn from those stories? Now she was genuinely pondering, the stoic front beginning to fracture. Mark could feel hope bubbling within him. You learn that real change starts at a personal level. The world isn't just numbers or profits, it's about people. It's about the choice to go beyond and engage with humanity. This time, the silence felt different, alive, resonating with potential. He noticed a subtle shift in the room, even the diners at the booths faded into the background as the executives took stock of what had just unfolded. Mark's pulse quickened. Could they actually be considering it? The possibility lay out like an unopened gift. And then, just as Mark began to believe in a real change, the younger executive frowned, uncertainty creeping back into his demeanor. But this is a business meeting, Mark. How does this connection translate into profits? A cold shiver ran down Mark's spine. The walls began to close in. Could they retreat back to the world he had hoped they might leave behind? Maybe, he said, hesitating as he caught Lisa's encouraging gaze. Maybe this is where real transformation starts. But are you willing to take that leap? The words lingered, the challenge draped in hope. But just as he saw a flicker of understanding illuminate the executives' faces, something shifted. A distant siren wailed outside, cutting through the fragile moment of connection. Would the siren pull them back into their old ways, or draw them forward into something new? The tension hung thick in the air, the crucial moment loaded with the weight of everything unspoken. And as Mark waited for their answer, a deep breath held. He knew this was the turning point. Would they seize the opportunity to open their hearts and minds, or would they let it slip away into the echo of the past? Mark could feel the air grow heavier, as if time itself held its breath. The siren faded into the background, but the tension screamed louder than any wailing. He glanced at Lisa, her eyes wide with anticipation, and then back to the executives, who each wore expressions ranging from skepticism to contemplation. He had to push past the doubt. What if I told you this isn't just about your bottom line? Mark said, his voice steadying. What if listening to those stories could transform not just your company but how you see the world around you? Imagine a business where every employee felt valued, motivated not just by paychecks but by purpose. Wouldn't that spark creativity? Wouldn't that drive success in ways numbers alone can't? The woman with the steely gaze leaned in slightly, a hint of curiosity sparking in her expression. You're saying empathy could equate to profit? Her tone was sharp, probing yet not dismissive. Yes. Mark exclaimed. It's about creating a culture that lifts people up, where customers feel they are seen, where employees don't just clock in and out but truly invest themselves in something bigger. You can cultivate an environment that thrives on care and connection. Those relationships have worth that's immeasurable. The younger executive shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his brows furrowed, a vision fighting to break through. But how do we start? His tone held both reluctance and a faint glimmer of hope, like a seed that could sprout if watered just right. That's the beauty of it, Mark said, encouraged by the question. You start small. Listen to your team first. Hold story-sharing sessions, give a platform for voices that go unheard. You'd be amazed at what your employees could bring to the table when they feel valued. Their experiences could redefine your vision. A heavy silence settled, one rich with possibility. Mark saw the executives glancing at one another, weighing the concept in their minds, weighing the risks against potential rewards. He took a deep breath, letting the moment linger, desperate for them to break free of their fears. I'll tell you this, Mark added, his voice dropping to a near whisper, charged with sincerity. Being heard can change a person. It can alter the course of their life. People deserve to tell their stories, and sometimes, that's all they need to take the next step forward. Lisa nodded enthusiastically, the passion rising in her. I've seen what happens when people connect. Comfort, revival. It's 100-fold return on investment. For a fleeting moment, the tension seemed to lift. Mark saw a flicker of recognition in the executives' faces, a seed planting itself. But just as he felt the tide turning, the young executive's expression darkened again. What if it doesn't work? He countered, eyes narrowing. What if this isn't the answer? The weight of that question hung in the air like a storm cloud, casting shadows over the hopeful moments they had just forged. Mark's heart sank. It felt like a door shutting, an obstacle. But instead of giving in, he felt driven by something greater. That's the risk, isn't it? Mark replied, unwavering. But think of the alternative. What if you missed out on the chance to connect? To inspire? I believe in the power of vulnerability. It's scary, but it's also human. You have to be willing to embrace that uncertainty if you want to create meaningful change. It's in the discomfort where we learn and grow. He could see hesitation in the young executive's eyes, an internal struggle wrestling with the concept of embracing humanity in a cutthroat world. Mark felt a surge of warmth. Maybe this was it, the moment where courage could be ignited. The siren bore down again, echoing off the diner's walls, reminding them of life outside. The world was loud, chaotic, but inside the diner, this was a sacred space for stories. Could it be the spark they needed to ignite their hearts, shifting their focus from mere numbers to the people behind them? As Mark awaited their response, hope, once flickering, began to blaze with anticipation. Would they take a chance on this leap into the unknown? Before he could ponder that question too long, the oldest executive who had sat quietly all this time shifted in her chair. I believe it's time to reconsider what drives us. But the first step is finding our own stories, isn't it? Mark nodded, heart racing again. Exactly. Will you allow yourself to start there? And as that question hung in the air, the potential for transformation felt tangible. Could they all step off that ledge together, into a space where hearts met minds, and profits merged with purpose? When the door swung open once more, it was as if a gust of fresh air burst in, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. Would they embrace it, or would they remain frozen in uncertainty? The answer was about to unfold. The moment hung delicately in the air, charged with unspoken words and potential. Mark felt Lisa's hand gently squeeze his, a silent reassurance that they were in this together. The executive's gaze shifted slowly, sharing quiet, fleeting glances, their walls beginning to tremble beneath the weight of possibility. The oldest executive, a strikingly poised woman with silver-streaked hair, continued, finding our stories is essential, yes. But what if sharing those stories exposes us in such a way that we risk everything we've built? That was the fear that lingered at the edges of every corporate ladder. Vulnerability. Mark searched for the right words, feeling the urgency of the moment. Vulnerability is strength, he said, his voice gaining momentum. It's the essence of being human. It's where creativity blossoms and innovation thrives. You can't just run a business, this is about creating a community. A community that trusts each other enough to share both struggles and triumphs. As the room swirled with thoughts, there was a moment where the weight of their world shifted. Mark watched the youngest executive, who had showed the most reluctance, sit up straighter, curiosity brimming in his wide eyes. I think we could try," he said hesitantly. "We could ask our team to share, to bring their stories to the forefront." The woman beside him leaned forward, her skepticism softening slightly. "But what if those stories are painful? What if they bring up issues we don't know how to address? We have a responsibility here." "That's true," Lisa interjected, her voice steady. "But addressing those painful stories can lead to deeper connections and real solutions. It's about embracing our humanity, the highs and the lows. The more we understand one another, the more we can support each other both personally and professionally." The room felt electric, anticipation buzzing among the executives. Mark's heart raced as he saw them contemplating could they go there together. Just then, a voice broke through the thickening atmosphere. A young waitress from a distant table approached their corner, her tray held close to her chest. "Excuse me," she started, her voice timid yet full of presence. "I couldn't help but overhear. If you're talking about stories, can I share mine?" Mark glanced at her, surprised. She was a student, her crisp uniform a little worn, but her eyes shone with a bright awareness. The executive seemed caught off guard, exchanging bewildered glances. "Sure, if you'd like," Mark encouraged, sensing this was a pivotal moment. She smiled nervously, adjusting her hair as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "I grew up in a neighborhood where dreams were scarce and optimism seemed out of reach. I remember the first time I realized that my story mattered. I was just a kid, and I thought working here was going to be the end of my journey. But listening to the customers, hearing their stories of struggle and triumph, I found my own strength. I found the courage to chase my dreams. That's why I share. I hope my story will inspire someone like me to keep going." Silence enveloped the table. Mark could feel the softness of her words resonate deeply. Lisa's eyes glistened with empathy, and even the oldest executive was visibly affected. "Thank you for sharing that," the woman said gently, her voice filled with warmth. "You've opened our eyes to something incredibly valuable." But before Mark could speak again, the restaurant door swung open once more, letting in a rush of air. A loud group walked in, laughing boisterously, contrasting sharply with the tender moment just shared. It was a jarring reminder of the everyday noise of life, distracting, yet grounding. Mark turned back to the executives, whose faces had transformed as they absorbed the waitress's story. "Do you see?" He gestured towards her. "Empathy is more than just understanding, it's about building a workplace culture that breeds inspiration. A culture where everyone feels they can contribute, share, and thrive." With a shared breath, the executives leaned in closer, intrigue lighting their expressions anew. "Let us step forward together," Mark urged gently, sensing this was the time to act. "Who will join me in embracing our stories?" And as uncertainty faded, a new journey began to forge itself before them. What changes might this commitment to vulnerability bring forth in their lives and those of their employees? The dawn of transformation was nearing, and the stories yet to be told held the promise of deeper connections. What would emerge once they took that leap? Mark could feel the shift in the room, the electricity charged with curiosity and a tinge of apprehension. The executives, once locked in their comfort zones, were now slightly undone, vulnerable. He waited for someone to respond, to break the silence, to take a step towards this new, uncharted path. The youngest executive cleared his throat, unease flickering across his face. "I think maybe it would be valuable to have a designated time for our team to share," he proposed, his voice a tentative first step into the depths. "A space where stories become a part of our meetings, our training instead of just numbers and reports." "That's a great idea," Lisa chimed in, her enthusiasm infectious. "Imagine a weekly storytelling session, where anyone can share their journey. It could transform how we view each other. The oldest executive leaned back, stroking her chin thoughtfully. It could help reshape our company culture, a way to foster deeper connections, but it will take time. And commitment from everyone involved. Mark nodded vigorously. Exactly. His heart surged with hope. This isn't just about sharing, it's about creating relationships. When we humanize each other, we also improve teamwork and morale. We could even integrate this into our company's core values. Imagine the impact. The executives nodded, slowly warming to the idea, but the ghost of hesitation haunted them still. Mark felt the tension in the air, a thread that could easily snap under the weight of fear or doubt. Then something remarkable happened. The waitress, who had just shared her story, returned to the periphery of the table. She was collecting empty plates, but her presence lingered. "Can I ask a question?" She interjected gently, wiping her hands on her uniform, her voice shy yet filled with purpose. "Of course," Mark replied, gesturing for her to step closer. "What makes you so sure that sharing will really help?" She looked each executive in the eye, earnestness radiating from her. "What if it doesn't? What if it all falls apart and you just end up with a bunch of painful memories?" Her words cut through the room like a cold breeze, raw and honest. Mark felt a pit form in his stomach. He knew the risk, but the truth was like a beacon. "We can't know for sure, but there's power in vulnerability," he said carefully, trying to steady his voice. "Every story will not be easy to bear, but they will illuminate something about ourselves and each other. Change doesn't come without courage." Lisa jumped in. "What we need is a promise. A commitment that we will respect and support whoever shares, regardless of how uncomfortable it might feel." "Exactly," the youngest executive said, finding his stride. "We promise to listen. We promise to support. And we promise to change." The oldest executive nodded, her silver hair catching the light. "I'm in. Let us create this space, but it needs to be safe. Not just for us but for our whole staff." Mark felt a wave of relief wash over him. They were moving forward. One small step at a time, but they were stepping. Suddenly, from the back of the restaurant, the voice of a child reached their ears, breaking the moment's seriousness. "Mommy, look. Can we sit there? The people are talking about stories." The innocence in the voice cut through the tension, triggering smiles among the executives and the waitress alike. "See?" Mark pointed toward the child. "Children understand the importance of stories inherently. Their eyes wide open to possibilities. Sometimes it's the outsider's perspective that brings clarity." The air shifted yet again, laughter bubbling amid the executives. Their armor began to dissolve, and the idea of interweaving personal narratives into their corporate landscape started to grow roots. Mark locked eyes with the young waitress, gratitude surging in his chest. "Thank you," he mouthed, fully aware that her courage had kindled this transformation. As the proposal took on a life of its own, Mark glimpsed the doorway of change crack wider. What began as a simple conversation might morph into extraordinary advancements in their professional realm, a place where stories flourished. But just as hope ignited, Mark felt a sudden chill. What would happen when they began sharing their stories? Would they be ready for the hidden layers of pain and joy that might surface? And would they truly be able to embrace these narratives when they came alive in their organization? The question lingered in the air, as palpable as the fresh buzz of excitement around the table, leaving Mark contemplating the depth of this new commitment and how it would challenge them all. The leap had just begun, but how far would they be willing to jump? The diner felt like a pressure cooker ready to burst open. Mark could feel the anticipation crackling in the air around him. Each executive present was transformed by the conversation, a kaleidoscope of hesitation, curiosity, and eagerness to embrace change. Lisa's spirit lit up the room as her warmth flowed into those hesitant hearts, urging them toward a brighter future. Mark cleared his throat, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "We'll need to take this seriously. When we start sharing, we have to remember that everyone's story matters, however big or small. It's in those stories that we'll find understanding, connection, and ultimately, community. The youngest executive nodded vigorously. Let us create a framework for this, he said. We could implement a series of workshops, where our employees feel comfortable sharing. We could even pair them with mentors to guide the process. Yes. A buddy system could work wonders. Lisa chimed in. Imagine sharing vulnerabilities and strengths between colleagues. That bond could lead to profound teamwork. Mark noticed the shift in the executives' reactions. Their expressions had transformed from skepticism to excitement, the gears in their minds visibly whirring. The older executive spoke, her voice steady. This requires a commitment from everyone in our company. We'll have to set an example, starting from the top. Mark smiled, his heart swelling with hope. Absolutely. It's time to break down those walls that separate us. Let's create a ripple effect that begins here and radiates outward. Suddenly, the diner door swung open once again. This time, a wave of enthusiastic chatter swept through, bringing with it a large group of teenagers with backpacks and busy schedules. They formed a vibrant blend of energy, encroaching on the corner where Mark and the executives gathered. Laughter spilled from their lips, a stark contrast to the deep, earnest discussions held moments before. What is going on? One of them shouted playfully, capturing the attention of the executives. Looks like you grown-ups are having a serious talk. Laughter erupted, breaking the tension that had been thick in the air. One of the executive men chuckled, then leaned toward the newcomers. We're actually discussing how to listen to stories. Cool. A girl interjected. Stories are amazing. They're how everyone connects, right? Her enthusiasm rippled through the group, and even the executives found themselves smiling at the wisdom delivered so effortlessly. Mark seized the moment, redirecting the atmosphere. Exactly. You guys get it. You find ways to connect through stories every day. We should do that too. Another teen called out, arms swinging dramatically. Like, we could host a storytelling night for the whole diner. That would be epic. Did he just say what I think he did? Mark felt the moment sizzle and crackle with potential. That's a fantastic idea. How about we organize a weekly storytelling night right here at the Great American Diner? The idea rolled through the diners like wildfire. Each patron seemed to lean in, their interest piqued. We could have an open mic. One of the older regulars shouted, excitement pouring from her voice. Imagine it. Mark continued, the thrill wrapping around him. A space where anyone can share their story, learn from one another and maybe inspire hope, laughter, or healing. Lisa lit up, nodding encouragingly. Every generation brings a new perspective. This could be a bridge between us where stories become shared treasures. The executives murmured with renewed delight, and it was as if a collective breath of fresh air renewed their spirit. Let us start action planning for our storytelling events, the youngest executive suggested. Maybe even expand into community partnerships. Mark held his gaze steady on the executives, his heart full. This isn't just about our business, it's about creating community essence and social impact. We stand for something bigger when we embrace the power of storytelling together. Yes. Lisa shouted, her passion contagious. Imagine the lives we could touch. This diner has always been a sanctuary, and now we can heighten that role. The air crackled with excitement, like sparks igniting in a great dark field, filling the diner with the resonance of hope and potential. Mark could see the realization dawn upon the executive group. They had the chance to foster change not just within their company but beyond it. As more ideas swirled around the room, Mark felt gratitude wash over him. The spirit of connection danced through every person gathered there, tangled in shared dreams and catching breaths of possibility. Every word shared and every story told would weave a rich tapestry of humanity, a tapestry they could build together. When the chatter of laughter and planning died down, there was an unmistakable wave of emotional warmth. Mark looked around, feeling that faint pulse of community inching towards something remarkable. The sun began to dip lower in the sky through the diner windows, casting a golden light over the worn booths, as patrons shared their excitement for what lay ahead. And there, in that humble diner filled with incredible souls, Mark saw the radiance of transformation begin to bloom. It was a moment they would all remember, the day when one little diner rolled the spark into a flame and embraced the essence of who they were destined to be together. Their stories, once hidden, would now resonate through the walls, sparking connections that were boundless. And as the night fell, enveloping the diner with warmth and joy, Mark realized his journey had just begun. This was their moment. This was their story. Now, dear friends, this is your chance to be part of something extraordinary. You need to subscribe now to catch the next incredible stories that unfold. This is the moment to show your support by leaving a like right now. It helps me reach even more amazing souls. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. We all deserve to remember that we are woven together through our stories. Let us create a world that celebrates our humanity with laughter, love, and unbreakable connection. Let's do it together.